Thank you for joining the Savvy Ladies Wednesday Wisdom webinar. I'm Maggie Montemuro, and I'm the Marketing Manager at Savvy Ladies. This is a quick reminder that if you have any questions during the webinar, you can type them into the chat box or email info@savvyladies.org. Today's presenter is Kompalya Thunderbird. Kompalya is a passionate speaker on human rights abuses. She lived in Thailand for 3.5 years, witnessing numerous women struggle within the vicious, inhumane cycle of human trafficking. Kompalya is also a former radio journalist who used the arts as an instrument for educational reform, women's initiatives, and artistic advancement. She believes that our career paths and choices can be a pathway to use our greatest gifts to serve humanity. Thank you for being with us today, Kompalya, and I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much. That introduction sounds wonderful. So I want to thank all of you for showing up today and being a part of this discussion. I know that you could be doing anything else on this Wednesday afternoon, so I do want to acknowledge you. I thank you, Maggie, and also Savvy Ladies for creating this wonderful space for work to world service. When I was about 19 years old, I had this powerful opportunity to compete as an athlete in Holland. It was a summer-long program, and not only would I compete as a track and field athlete, I would have the opportunity to live with two host families, see Holland, and also some of the surrounding countries. What I didn't anticipate was how much this first international experience would change my life forever. I wasn't fully prepared to meet the culture underneath the iceberg. I believe that the program prepared the entire team by paper, as we say, to meet and greet the people of Holland. But there were certain things that were underneath the iceberg that we were not prepared for. And this propelled me further to want to create a life of service and want to create a life that involves understanding the intrinsic nature of different cultures and wanting to serve the world and make it a better place. Track and field was only one door that opened up for me. What I had to realize in this journey, even though I was quite young, is that I had to give up defining myself to others. And Eckhart Tolle says it best: give up defining yourself to yourself or to others. You won't die. You will come to life, and don't be concerned with how others define you. When they define you, they are limiting themselves, so it's their problem. Whenever you interact with people, don't be there primarily as a function or a role, but as the field of conscious presence. You can only lose something that you have, but you cannot lose something that you are. And I truly believe from work to world service is becoming who you truly are. One thing I love about doing this work is the ability that it creates for us to truly connect with what is innate within us. So I always talk about innate skills and using innate skills to navigate the world of humanitarianism or your careers, because we really want to use our degrees, the knowledge that we've gained throughout our years, whether we're just starting out, whether we've just graduated, or whether we've been in the field for 10 or 20 years, but truly using it to serve our communities and better the world around us. So one thing I've found for myself in working in various fields is the true act and calling of intuition. Using your intuition does have a basis for world service. If we view the world from the perspective of the media, we will only see the prison of negativity. We come closed off to others, other creeds, genders, races, nationalities, and for so many of us, of course, homophobia must step in. From the basis of using your innate skills to navigate your world of humanitarianism, we start with self, not what you wanted to hear, correct? So to end the misery that has afflicted the human condition for thousands of years, you have to start with yourself and take responsibility for your inner state at any given moment, and that means now. I know so many of our college courses and our career paths, we don't really take a moment to stop and investigate with us what is going on internally within our world. And what I've recognized in doing more global work is that there are so many of us truly wanting to service the world, but we forget that we must service ourselves and truly be in touch with that innate part of ourselves. So as we go through this short half an hour, I will always call us back to truly listening to our intuition and to that innate calling that we don't have, that is sometimes clouded by the outside world and the outside perspectives of what we should and should not be doing. So, in the now, Tolle talks about, right? In the now, we are often squeezed by responsibilities, cares for others, jumping through the hurdles of our lives, or crawling under them, denying who we truly are. But the innate skills that are within us, what is innate, can be developed, it can be expressed, but we usually leave it at the doors, looking to life to dictate who we should be or who we shouldn't be. So, what does this truly mean? What is inherent is usually the qualities we find the easiest to express. I had so many students in the past when I was teaching ESL in many of my classes who had these natural abilities, whether it was for art, whether it was the natural abilities of negotiation, whether it was the natural abilities of understanding different languages and communication. But so many of them would stifle these gifts due to parental control at times, due to society, because they had to find that real job. And I think so many of us understand the term the real job. And finances are essential, but for this course, we want to also search what is inborn, what is in us, that can also still lead to financial prosperity. So, what feels natural and the capabilities that allows us to express this out into the world? For a long period of time, I worked with the now defunct H2O Media, and it was such a great non-for-profit media organization, and it truly is a shame that it's no longer up and running. But within the organization, I decided to revamp a youth film festival to be able to give youth in inner communities in New York City the ability to write and create and direct their own stories. And it was a powerful moment. We also collaborated with companies like Scenarios USA, who also works with Hollywood directors and teenagers who actually write their own stories and recreating the view that um, we see of them from the mass media. And I understood the power of the story and recreating the story that we tell ourselves internally and externally. One thing I loved about this youth film festival, it got me out of my bubble and out of my comfort zone within the company. And due to that, I started to market like crazy. I marketed to different organizations around the nation and around the and also externally. So I even went as far as to interview people that had nothing to do with media. I interviewed health practitioners. And what I realized in stepping out of this comfort zone, I was able to begin the catalyst for the movement that would set me out on a new path. So, in interviewing a health practitioner by the name of Gary No, some of you may be familiar with him. He's quite well known in the holistic health field. I interviewed him on some serious topics with holistic health and dealing with, medical practitioners. And a day later, I was offered a position on PRN radio, and this was long before podcasting and internet radio was even considered cool. And this only came about because I was willing to step out of my comfort zone. So, one thing I've realized is that in focusing on our intuition, we must step out of our bubble and we must create clear goals for ourselves. And even if it means stepping out of the bubble within the organizations and the companies that we work for, it can truly put us on a new path and really bring us back into our calling. I was never asked to interview Gary No, but I knew that his expertise and his experience, not only in health, but in media, would benefit me and the organization. So I truly believe in setting those clear goals for yourself and even having those personal goals within the company, being able to share those ideas so that it can be the catalyst for something new. Set the intention of using what is inborn, no matter what position you hold, no matter where you are on the table within your own life and within these organizations that you may be working with. Now, I know there will be those who do not take on your aspirations the way you do. I know that sometimes we will have obstacles and barriers when we are working with other people. We might have great ideas, but at times these ideas may not be taken off the table. And one thing that I love, even after we create the clear goals and set our intentions, I believe Maya Angelou says it best. We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated. And I think that holds true for so much of what I've experienced in wanting to walk my own path. So, by using my creativity as a catalyst to fuel world service, I discovered parts of myself that were innate. I wasn't expecting to, but it was part of the self discovery. So, exploring your natural creativity as a catalyst to fuel world service. So, world service will allow for the benefits of many, whether we start directly within our own communities or not. PRN had opened a doorway for me to truly come out of my own bubble, the comfort zone that we were talking about, to come out of what was familiar and repetitious for me. What I also had to learn was losing the idea of me. So I have a powerful quote: losing the idea of me is the point of liberation. It was no longer about myself. It was no longer about me and what I wanted career wise or getting ahead and keeping up with others. It was about a greater global perspective and a greater global plan. So losing the idea of me is a point of liberation. Sakyong Mipam talks about that in Ruling Your World. It's a powerful book in understanding that this force of me is very limited and egotistical, that there's so much of us to share with each other if we truly come together. So what was also helpful was the sharing of ideas. And I think the sharing of ideas with forward thinkers also allowed me to see that we can also work together collectively, because you definitely don't want to be the smartest person you know, right? So I think we've heard that before. If you're the smartest person in the room, definitely find another group. You want to be around forward thinkers. You want to be around people that help you push yourself to the grain. So it's helpful also to share ideas so that we can build trust, to believe in our new values. And it also offers us the chance for others to gain more insight into who we are and possibly add to the investment of our new ideas, whether it's a financial investment, whether it's more creative investment, whatever it is. We truly want to surround ourselves with those type of creative thinkers. What I didn't enjoy on the path is that even though I was following my intuition, that even though I felt that this path of world service that was coming through the work that I was doing with H2O Media and PRN, I wasn't fully prepared to make as many mistakes as possible. I know that I'm a perfectionist, and that was something that I had to release, was truly being prepared to make as many mistakes as possible so that it can catapult me to the next level of what I needed to do. So I had to really empower myself by changing what I was seeking for myself and allowing the mistakes to come so that it can be a learning process for myself and create the environment to honor success and failures. And I had never thought about this before, to really honor the failures as much as I honor the successes, to celebrate taking risk. I didn't truly celebrate taking that risk when I decided to interview Gary Null, but it was a huge risk. The organization that I worked with did not have to record it and put it on their own internet radio programs and their own podcasts. It was a risk. But I realized later on in honoring those risks and honoring those mistakes, as we all know, we become a stronger and better person for ourselves and humanity, for our communities and the world at large. So, despite the anxiety that may come about in taking these risks, I think it's well worth it. So, I had to decide that trial and error would help me to obtain these new skills and a new level of confidence that was needed, because it seemed that with the work that I was doing, there was some new growth there. It was wonderful to work in media, it was wonderful to work in entertainment, but PRN was somehow pushing me forward to create something else. I remember traveling, as Maggie said, I had spent nearly 4 years in Thailand, and I met a entrepreneur from Belgium, female entrepreneur who decided to create her own holistic practice in Thailand. And I thought, wow, what a powerful woman. You know, these stories that you never hear of expat women creating businesses abroad. And I asked her about some of her challenges and her learning curves. And what was amazing to me, it wasn't about finding the capital or the investors for her business to survive and to thrive. It was also understanding what was underneath the iceberg of different cultures, and really, were you truly able to extend yourself beyond your comfort zone, beyond your own culture and thinking what is right and wrong, and meet people where they are. And so many of you already know a working environment can create so much stress as well as joy. But when you're dealing with a different culture, a different language, there's more layers to some of the difficulties that one may face. And I thought her tenacity to really stick it out for 5 years in a foreign country, creating her own business, was something to be said. And just being able to stick it out, gaining new people skills, understanding the mentality of different corporate structures around the world, was definitely an important skill for her to learn, and it was definitely important for me to learn. So I think as we step out of our bubble and our comfort zone, to always remind ourselves that there's someone else coming up the ladder that we can turn back and teach. If it wasn't for her describing her failures as well as her successes and being okay to honor both, I would not have been able to stand firm in the 3.5 years that I was in Thailand. So I say that specifically, that when we do see younger people coming on board, no matter what their platform is, to truly, if we've truly honored ourselves, to turn back and be able to tell him or her about some of our successes and failures, some pitfalls they can avoid, some pitfalls that they might fall through just because they are learning, but always to give that opportunity. One thing that also assisted me in creating these lofty goals and wanting to do humanitarian work was timetables and dream boards. Everyone knows about timetables, there's schedules, it's facts, it's deadlines, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. We all need deadlines. What I love is combining dream boards. So, if you have these unusual projects that you wish to obtain, definitely timetables and schedules. But what's a dream board? So, if you haven't heard of a dream board, it's actually being as creative as possible, getting some artistic paper and filling it up with pictures, whether you receive pictures from magazine articles or books, and actually putting these pictures on this board. It could be a piece of paper, it could be an actual board, and have it somewhere in your home where it's visual to you. If you have some unusual projects, maybe you want to keep it to yourself, but it allows you a visual. It's like a visual affirmation every day you rise, to see the goals that you have before you and how you want to move forward in accomplishing them. For people that are very visual, I think it works quite well with a timetable. If you have some unusual projects that may appear extremely lofty and you don't know how to move from step A to step B to step Z, I also think it's a phenomenal component along with timetables, because what it is, we really want to achieve results. Correct? Everything is about being result oriented. But what I've found with creating the dream board, it added an extra power to the time schedules and the deadlines that I needed to create for myself. So if you can practice both, that would be great. The vision board, as I said, if you want to keep it private or make it something that everyone in your family can share, if it's a family dream board that you want to create, or maybe a company dream board if you're working with people that are quite creative in your office, it truly does work, and it has worked for me. I had worked on a particular project outside of the humanitarian work, which I will talk a little bit about later. There was a phenomenal American entrepreneur who I also met in Asia who was putting together her own Broadway show. And it was something that was never done before. And I'm stating this specifically because it's one of those unusual projects that you never know how it's going to get off the ground. And she wanted to create Broadway style plays in a particular area of the world where only the elite go to see Broadway plays. It's not like here in New York City or California or Chicago where theaters really open to everyone. It's, Broadway plays really are for the elite. And what I realized in assisting her with her marketing and understanding what she wanted to express out into the world was you must have this robust personality, that we must dig in deep into our innate intuition, into clearing out the bubble that we often put ourselves in, doing the vision boards that we believe in, and truly create this world that we want. So she acquired a small team. I was a part of that team, and creating venues, just literally going out there and creating the venues that was necessary for this particular project. And what we found was is that there was a lot of interest in creating these kinds of theater pieces. And it wasn't only for the elite that we thought it would be for. There were many people that were open. So again, I think once we come out of the comfort zone, come out of the bubble that we've created for ourselves, we often see that there can be a manifestation of greatness if we allow ourselves to follow that intuition, even if it sounds crazy. Even if it sounds crazy. So one of the other things that I noticed, sorry for the slides, was that some of you already know that in working with that, for me working in PRN, I started to shift my focus from the arts and focus more on humanitarian work, because I just noticed a total lack of concern in regards to women's issues and human rights from the mainstream media. And some of you know that Kevin Bale's Disposable People and the New Slavery truly changed my life. And so PRN was slowly shifting my mentality and creating these spaces that I can connect and create with people, connect with different international organizations. I had no idea that the book and PRN would lead me into Thailand for 3.5 years, but truly it was following the goal that if I can create the space on PRN and have a collective force of people that were willing to take the initiative, that I can do the same. It's hard. I'm not here to say that it's easy. It is arduous work, but I think if we understand what the calling is, we can truly become our own leaders. So, one thing that I wanted to touch on is becoming your own leader. I think so many of us look outside of ourselves for leadership, and I understand that there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's a calling for us all to truly become leaders within ourselves, within our communities, and within the world that we are looking to create. And you may have to start out small. It may just start with you trusting yourself. It may just start with you forging forward with a new career path. It may just start with you and your family. But I think becoming your own leader is of utmost importance in this day and age. And becoming your own leader requires commitment to the intrinsic calling to one's life purpose. I've met so many people throughout the years in every field that I've been in who are tired, fatigued of their careers, feel that their institutions, their educational institutions, have failed them, but we are not coming home to the commitment, to the intrinsic calling to our life purpose. And the scariest thing is listening to the intrinsic call to your life purpose and realizing the path that you're on may not be the path that you are called to do. It's a nervous, anxious feeling when you know that you are not walking the path that was laid out for you. It's a nervous, anxious feeling when we know and recognize that our career paths must change. Maybe we don't have the time or the money to return to school. Maybe we feel that we don't have the knowledge or the education, but there's something within that intuition, within our innate being, that's calling so many of us to become our own leaders, whether it's in our family or whether it's in our community. So many of us struggle with finding our life purpose or being able to articulate it. And I know that it is arduous. I know that it's arduous to follow that spark that is within us, but the spark keeps calling, doesn't it? It keeps sending out that message that this is what we're supposed to do and we don't do it. So for some of us, I know when we hear the calling, we jump to it. There's no questions asked. We don't look how far how deep into the pool we have to jump. We just do it. And for some of us, there's anxiety and there's panic attacks. There's something holding us back. So I go back into the bubble that we talked about earlier. I go back into that comfort zone that we all have, that we must break free from. Because following the true path, right, may leave us at first. Maybe we are afraid of finances. Maybe we're afraid that our families won't understand. Maybe it means relocating to a different state or a different country, but it's always a calling that's there. It may not make any physical sense, but it's there. So that's why I started with intuition. It made no sense for me to travel to Thailand for 3.5 years, but intuitively I knew I had to do it because it was the calling. And the calling to assist women out of their journey of sex trafficking or human trafficking changed my entire global perspective. Because I don't see young girls and women the same anymore. I see the interconnectedness, the intersectionalities that we refuse to talk about, that is so imperative. And I see that the bond of women that we have to create must move beyond creed, race, nationality, and homophobia. It must. So, what part of your inner calling beckons you to serve? Serve as a teacher, serve as an entrepreneur, serve as a chef, whatever it is. As we close today, I ask you, what part of you is truly calling for your service? It could be some of those unusual projects that you've pushed back for the past 10, 15 years or 2 years. It could be the thing that you love that you put aside because you had to start a family, and there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you put it aside because you had to raise children, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I urge you today, as we talk about world service, that it starts within you. The inner state starts at any given moment. It may not make sense, but if we use those dream boards, if we use a timeline that will give us scheduling and deadlines, perhaps we can move out of the anxiety, the impatience that we have with ourselves and with life, and move back into our calling and to our world service. When I moved to, I'll tell you one last story. When I moved to Thailand, I wanted to give up. I couldn't find too many NGOs that were doing the work that I wanted to do. I saw so many foreign women that were in the area against their will. And I just thought, I can't do this. It was a year. So we're talking about 12 months. My intuition says go. I do it. I jump into the pool and then nothing. So I decided to go on holiday. And when I went on holiday, there was a documentary. And this documentary was specific about human trafficking in Thailand. And two NGOs that were mentioned that were doing a lot of work, not just with local women, but with foreign women, and trying to get the Thai government to like truly pressure some of the, how should I say, these underground workers to be, penalized for what they're doing to these women. And just in that moment, my answer came. I decided to reach out to these organizations, and that's how my journey started. But it took time. And at times it made no sense. And I think a lot of times intuition just doesn't make any sense. But we're all taught to follow the logical mind. And I'm here to tell you that logic does rule, but we have to come into being with our innate leader, which challenges us to follow that intuition and to follow that calling. So after a year of not being able to do what I felt called to do, just having to be patient, I finally found the right organization for myself. And I finally discovered some of the things that I won't name any names, but larger NGO organizations refuse to look at. So it was really interesting. You had these huge multinational NGOs that refuse to do, that have large amounts of budgets that refuse to do certain work. And then you have smaller ones in the region that are trying to do the work, but don't necessarily have the budget, but have to really use their creativity to help these women. So I'm here to tell you that I'm so happy that you listened in. I'm grateful. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you have questions. And to follow that inner calling, to become a world server also means becoming your own inner leader until we can take it out into the world and following your innate abilities and intuition. I thank all of you so much for listening in. I can't thank you enough for sharing your half an hour with me. And if you have any questions, I'm definitely open.
Thanks, Kampalia. That was great. I would like to remind everyone, if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat box or you can email info@savvyladies.org. And the first question we had come in already is, are there ways to get funding for small humanitarian projects?
Definitely. The Foundation Center, even if I don't know what state the person is calling from. If you're in New York City, there's a library called the Foundation Center. If you're not in New York State, you can go to thefoundationcenter.org, or you can just Google the Foundation Center. They are a powerful resource of funding, and it's funding for any kind of work that you truly need to do. I would definitely look into the Foundation Center. If it doesn't come up under foundationcenter.org, please Google them. You are allowed to use their database. I think it's a monthly service charge if you cannot walk in directly into their library. They have a library in Atlanta and they have one in New York. I believe they have one in California. But as I mentioned, you can use their services online.
Okay, thank you. And the next question we have is, what advice do you have for someone who wants to volunteer in her spare time and make a difference, but is really unsure herself of what the best fit would be based on her strengths?
That's such a great question. I think, but it based on your strength. I think understand what your strengths truly are, and I think go from there. There's so many different organizations, there's so many people and that need assistance. I say don't limit yourself. And even at this point, if you're unsure of where to volunteer or where to go, just try everything. When I was in high school, I volunteered down at the Bowery in New York City for homeless men and women. And I would do that on Thanksgiving as well as Christmas. And a lot of my friends thought I was crazy, but just try. Try the different possibilities in volunteering until you find your niche. Nothing will go wrong from that. I think you just discover who you are and also meet some great people along the way. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I think this is the last question we have. I would love to be part of a humanitarian group, but I'd also like to be my own leader. What would be the pros and cons of being part of a group versus acting on my own?
Okay. Um, I think first start out with the group. I think that if you're new to doing humanitarian work and you're part of a group, it definitely gives you the skills that you will need to eventually be out on your own. I think just working within an NGO or an organization, you begin to understand the dynamics of the people who are doing a lot of humanitarian work. There may be some skill sets you don't yet have that could be necessary, that can be um, learned in a particular job or position. The other thing with going out on your own, it's quite powerful because you have to become your own leader, in that you have to trust yourself, you have to trust your innate abilities, and through that, you'd really discover who you truly are. I think the best thing to do if you're starting out is try to merge both, being a leader and also working in some organization, because as I mentioned, the commitment to becoming your own leader is the intrinsic calling to what your life purpose is. So understanding what your life purpose is, even if it means being in a part of a group or an organization for a short period of time, just so you gain some more skills, so you become a better leader or a greater leader. Or if you want to do some crazy projects and you don't find any matches or synergies and you want to go out on your own, just know that the path may be a bit arduous, but it doesn't mean that it's insurmountable. You can definitely do it. And I say do that if that's necessary, but you have to trust yourself. If you're going to go out on your own, maybe call up some different organizations, see if you can just have an informational interview. So you're just calling up to find out different information on different positions or different functions that the organization is using that you can probably use for yourself. But I think already you're asking this question, and it's such a powerful question, and perhaps your path will show you that you need both or you need to completely go out on your own.
Okay, thank you. Um, all right, well, I want to thank you, Kompalya, for a truly inspiring presentation. And I want to thank everyone who joined us today and asked questions. We hope that you'll join us again. And thank you again so much, Kompalya. It was so great.
Thank you so much. And I thank you and I thank Savvy Ladies for creating this space. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.